Video games can be truly impactful. There are a plethora of video games that have changed people's lives. There are a lot of games that especially get a lot of praise for how truly captivating they are, and most of the time, I think the praise is well deserved. But sometimes there are games that I just don't understand the appeal of, or they're simply just not for me. So allow me to go over 5 games in which I don't like but everyone else likes. I want you to keep in mind that this is all just my opinion, and it's personally fine if you disagree as long as you respect my opinion. I'm not even saying I hate a lot of these games, they're just not as captivating to me as I expected them to. Without further ado, let's start the crusty list.
Number 5.
As for the 5th entry on this list, I'm giving it to no other than Far Cry 4. Far Cry has always felt like a two-hit wonder franchise for me, as it seems like the only games that really get mass amounts of praise are Far Cry 2 and 3. I haven't played Far Cry 2 yet, but I have played Far Cry 3, and I will admit this game is a masterpiece. It has some of the best characters, plot, and writing I've ever seen in a video game. So going forward into the Far Cry franchise, I expected more of this. A lot of people like to say that Far Cry 6 is the game where the franchise started to lose creativity, but I'd argue that creativity started to get lost all the way back in Far Cry 4. I mean, for hell's sake, every Far Cry game since 3 has followed the exact same formula that 3 had. Far Cry 4 is the game that started this. This game tried really hard to be the next Far Cry 3, but it missed the mark with one major issue. That being the protagonist. This game has an absolutely amazing villain. They absolutely knocked it out of the park with Pagan Min, clearly inspired by the success of Voss. However, what they didn't achieve is making a just as interesting protagonist. What made Voss such an amazing villain was his rivalry with the main character, Jason. And what made Jason interesting was the fact that he was just a complete nobody on this island. He didn't have any great strengths like other heroes. He was just a random, helpless castaway who was kidnapped in this absolute nightmare that is the setting of Far Cry 3, with Voss being the one in charge and the greatest threat to Jason. That is until the plot goes haywire once you kill him, of course. Because of this, Jason had to learn to fight for himself and survive in this harsh environment, so he can eventually overcome this threat that is Voss. Far Cry 4's villain, Pagan Min, follows the same footsteps as Voss, being absolutely terrifying and ruthless. However, what makes him not as interesting in my opinion is that there isn't an interesting hero to confront him. The hero in question, Ajay Ghale, I don't even hate him because he's everything that Jason isn't, because the whole point of this guy is that he's a lot stronger than Jason physically. I mean, he has experience in the military. But physically strong characters can still be interesting or relatable. Ajay Ghale doesn't have any traits that are unique or relatable. His whole personality just boils down to, I want to spread my mom's ashes in Lakshmana or whatever the fuck. Another thing I would like to add is that the PC port is absolutely atrocious. It runs horribly. It freezes, it crashes, at least on my end. It's not even like I have bad specs or anything. I was perfectly able to run Far Cry 6 on my PC, and that's a much newer, heavier game. How does it perform on dog shit on Far Cry 4? This is one of those games that I had to quit solely because I just couldn't stand how it ran on my computer. In conclusion, Far Cry 4 just completely forgets what makes Far Cry 3 so great. While Far Cry 3 may have an amazing villain, what made him truly captivating was the hero that rivaled him. While Far Cry 4 also has an amazing villain, the protagonist, on the other hand, just sucks in comparison.
Number 4.
The next game I'm going to talk about is similar to Far Cry in the sense that there's a specific game in the franchise that a lot of people blame for being the worst one or the one that caused the franchise's downfall, but I believe the issue started way earlier than that. This game in question being Danganronpa 2. Danganronpa is a franchise that is known for plot holes, inconsistencies, and just overall bad writing. The most notable example being Danganronpa V3. But I'm not talking about Danganronpa V3, because in my opinion, I believe that the plot holes and inconsistencies started way before this game, all the way back in Danganronpa 2. Even Danganronpa 1 to an extent, but I believe that the sequel was when things started getting out of hand. I'll address the elephant in the room as my primary example. In the final trial of the second game, Junko Anashima reveals that people have done things with her corpse. If you know, you know. And my response to this is, didn't she get squashed flat in the first game? How are people doing the devil's tango with her corpse? If they were doing that, they would have been doing it with a full-on pancake. And this is only the start of the many inconsistencies that will follow Danganronpa as a franchise afterwards. This is also the start of bringing back Junko for the most ridiculous reasons after this game. Like, yeah, Junko was a solid villain in the first game, and I even like some of her later appearances, but every time they try to bring her back, it just feels forced, and the reasons for why they bring her back are always stupid. I still stand by the fact that if they never killed Junko off in the first game, then a lot of the inconsistencies that happened after the first game would most likely never happen. As for some other problems I have with the second game, can we just talk about how awful, and I mean how awful, a lot of the characters are in this game, specifically the female characters. I'm not trying to be sexist or anything, but the first and third installments had some pretty solid female characters. As for this game though, these characters are absolutely atrocious. Like, how the hell did Sonya survive? She does fucking nothing and is one of the most blank slate, white bread characters I've ever seen in media. And characters that are actually interesting end up dying midway. Also, I'm just gonna say this, I don't fucking like Chiaki. She feels like she's trying way too hard to be likable, and it seems like she's trying to appeal to a very specific audience.
Oh my god, Chiaki Nanami is my dream girl. She's a female, and she likes video games, and she's cute. You know who else likes video games? Me, so we'd be a perfect fit.
Then there's Mikan, who is honestly just really creepy. There's a lot of fan service with her, which is really questionable when you consider the fact that she's supposed to be a high schooler, and her actions can be really questionable. I guess it kind of makes up for it for having some amazing male characters, but a lot of these bitches are just flat out insufferable. Also, I don't know if this problem is because I played this game right after the first one, but I just found the first 3 chapters to be really boring. Don't get me wrong, the game goes from like 1 to 100 once chapter 4 starts, but these first 3 chapters just feel really tame for Danganronpa standards. Or maybe this isn't me, because chapter 3 is known to be arguably the worst trial in the entire series. So in conclusion, inconsistencies start here, the women suck, and yeah, the first half of this game is just not that good.
Number 3.
Number 3 on this list goes to a follow-up to a game that I don't even like all that much, but I still highly respect it. The sequel, on the other hand, I was able to finish completely, and if I'm going to be honest, this game just kinda blows. I'm talking about Deus Ex Human Revolution. I wanted to like this game so badly, because in theory, it should be everything I wanted. It's a badass dystopian cyberpunk shooter with political and societal commentary. In concept, this game is great. A world where augmented cyborg people take over society in the future, while also facing discrimination against the pure human civilians despite not really doing anything wrong. My main issue is the way that this theme is executed. The main storyline just doesn't really dig into this concept that well. Most of what you're going to find that truly depicts this well all comes from NPC interactions and side quests. As far as the main storyline goes, it doesn't really play too much into this whole theme, which is a real shame because it honestly could have been amazing. Speaking of the main storyline, it simply just doesn't do a good job at keeping you engaged. This game's plot just feels really bland in the way it presents itself. A lot of character interactions boil down to just stale and flavorless interactions with no sauce. A lot of games I enjoyed are filled with personality when it comes to their dialogue and character interaction. The dialogue felt full of life and immersive in the games that I enjoyed. I don't know how to describe it, but the dialogue in Human Revolution just feel dead to me. I don't know, it just feels like people blabbering about stuff to me with no real character or personality behind it. This game also tries to be one of those games where your choices affect how the game plays out. But again, this only applies to side quests. As far as the mainline story goes, there aren't really many moments where you can actually change what happened. The only things you can really change in the main storyline are your dialogue options. Because of this lack of freedom when it comes to the main storyline just comes off as really forgettable. Like, I'm gonna be honest, I do not remember a thing that happened in this game after I beat it. Like, I actually had to look up what the hell the plot even was. And looking back in retrospect, there's just so much wasted potential when it comes to decisions that could have been made, outcomes that could have been changed, etc. My problem with this game isn't the fact that it's a linear story. My problem is the fact that it wants to be a dynamic story that you have control of, but the only things you have control of are outside of the main storyline. Because of this, it's just full on misleading, and the storyline is just absolutely forgettable and boring. If I were to give one last complaint, this main character, Adam Jensen, is just kinda cringy. He's very obviously trying to play this cool guy persona, but I don't know, something about his action, something about his dialogue and just everything about this guy just comes off as corny to me. I don't know, I think this is a personal thing, but I don't know, this guy, I'm sorry, there's way better cool guy protagonists. Adam Jensen isn't that, but I don't know, I'm not feeling it with Adam Jensen personally. In conclusion, this game had an amazing concept on paper, but didn't do a good job at executing it. This game is also not sure of what it wants to be as far as where its story goes. It's clearly trying to be a dynamic story where your choices matter in the game, but they only really matter in side quests and with NPC interactions. And the main storyline is just really linear, as well as really boring and flavorless and bland and just overall forgettable. Also, the main character's kind of cringe.
Number 2.
As for the last two games I'm going to mention, I will warn you that we're getting into some real hot take territory. These games are absolutely beloved. I don't see these games get hate at all. At least with the last three games I mentioned, at least I see some people that don't like them, but these are games that everyone, and I mean everyone, agrees are masterpieces, and I simply don't see them in that same light. Without further ado, the next game I'll be talking about is the original Dishonored. Now, the reason I don't like Dishonored that much is honestly just a lot more personal, and that being that, if I'm going to be honest, a lot of what Dishonored does, a bunch of other video games just do way better. Starting off with the gameplay and overall combat, yes, can you believe it? I'm actually talking about gameplay, not just the story. The gameplay just feels like yeah, it's a stealth game, but maybe I'm just a big Hitman meat rider, and I just look at Hitman 3 as the definitive stealth game. This game also just suffers from the same problem that Human Revolution suffered from, where its dialogue segments are just really boring and lifeless to me. The game's storyline just kind of boils down to oh wow, you're this guy who's delivering shit for the queen, and then oh no, these bad guys invade. But oh wow, there's actually this group of people who are really nice and help you out, and then oh no, they turn against you at the very end. Isn't that so surprising? Yeah, I played BioShock before. I've seen this shit before. This is I don't know, this game just feels so derivative of other games. Okay, maybe not derivative, but I've just played so many games that just do what this game has done way better. Stealth, Far Cry and Hitman do that way better. Story is literally just fucking BioShock. The more I look into this game, the more it feels derivative of BioShock. There's this little girl character who's meant to be a daughter figure. And I'm just like, I've seen this shit before in BioShock games. I know that there are games out there that borrow a lot more from BioShock than this game does. An example would be Atomic Heart. And I love Atomic Heart, but what makes that game good is that it feels more like a love letter to BioShock, if anything. And it actually has a unique identity and some sense of personality to it. Dishonored, in comparison, just feels like a cheap imitator. I think this is just more personal to me, if anything else. Like, out of all the games I've listed, the reason I hate this one is just, I don't know, it's just more personal. Like, I feel like a lot of what this game does, just other games just do way better, in my opinion. And it's like, I totally get the appeal. I can understand why people like this game. Like, I think it has a lot to offer, but I just think there's other games that just do it better, you know? I don't really have much else to really say. This game just doesn't click with me. I was expecting to see something new in this game, something unique, but alas, I just got a game that just felt very derivative of other games. Not even like derivative, just like what this game had to offer was done way better in other games, and I wanted something new, something that would make this game stand out, but this game just doesn't really have anything, in my opinion. Without further ado, let's move on to number 1.
Number 1.
As I said before, these last two picks are controversial, but unlike with Dishonored, where I did not have much of a logical reason to dislike the game, and it all came down to personal preference, this game, on the other hand, I have some perfectly valid criticisms and reasons to dislike it. Not to mention, this game is even more highly praised than Dishonored. If you were to compare Dishonored to this game, in forms of like which game gets more praise and which game is like more considered a masterpiece, Dishonored is on the same level as E.T. for Atari when it comes to this entry. With that out of the way, my number 1 entry for the top 5 games that I dislike but everyone else likes goes to none other than Omori. Omori is a game that is highly praised for its story. Unlike the other entries on this list, which aren't completely story-driven, this game is far more story-driven compared to the rest of the entries. This game's plot is known to be an intense emotional roller coaster. It's meant to be heartwarming, depressing, and the kind that will completely change your life. So how did I feel about this game, as someone who prioritizes story when it comes to gaming? Especially since this game is supposed to be a masterpiece. The truth is simple. I fucking hated it. Because good lord, Omori's storyline is the most inconsistent, poorly paced thing I have ever stumbled across. The whole idea of Omori is that you're traveling across 2 different worlds, the dream world and the real world. But the problem is that nothing happens in the dream world, outside of random nightmare sequences to remind you of the real world shit. All you do in these Dreamworld segments is fight cake monsters and go on space adventures, and then once you get to the real world, they just dump all this lore and character development and plot points onto you. All the emotional core that's in this game, that's apparently so amazing and worth changing your life, either happens at the very end or during those real world segments. And it sucks because the real world consists of all this great drama and character development and shit, only for it to get ruined by you going to the dream world and doing absolutely nothing. Just fucking around. Like seriously, what is the point of these dream world segments? It's practically just filler. I'm sorry, but what exactly does thrashing Sweetheart's Palace and throwing hands with Space Rangers have anything to do with Omori's crippling depression and guilt? This problem's made even worse when you consider the fact that the real world segments take only 30 minutes per session. You can find yourself in a dream world segment for hours at a time, doing tasks that have zero to do with the plot. Yes, don't get me wrong, it has its amazing moments, it does have its big payoffs, but they're ruined when half of the game is basically just filler. Look at a game like Persona 5, for example. That game also features 2 settings, the overworld and the metaverse. There may not be as much lore and story beats happening in the metaverse, but it's still a crucial part to get through, because it's a major step to put an end to the real conflicts happening in the overworld. The whole idea of Persona 5 is to steal artifacts inside people's minds, to turn them into better people. The overworld takes time to develop an antagonist, while the metaverse being where you go to steal that artifact in their mind so that they can become a better person. In Persona 5, there's a crucial reason to why you're going from the real world to a palace in the metaverse. There's a reason that makes sense in the story for that. What crucial reason does Omori have to go to the dream world? After all this crazy shit happens in the real world, he just goes to his room and plays imagination in his head. Like, what's the fun in that? Imagine if in GTA San Andreas, every time you do a mission, CJ just goes to his room and just goes to some imaginary fairy tale land where he's defeating dragons. Do you see any fun in that? Because if anything, that just completely messes with the tone and overarching story. Well, that's basically Omori in a nutshell. And before you go, oh, but Omori's dissociating from reality so he can cope from all the trauma. And I'm like, still, that just doesn't make for an interesting story or an interesting plot if half of the game is just filler where the story doesn't progress at all. In conclusion, Omori just has an absolute mess of a storyline. You can't make a plot where half of the game takes place in the setting where the story does not progress at all, and if you're gonna do that, at least do what Persona 5 did and give a crucial reason to why a good chunk of the story takes place there. To me, Omori simply fails at the very thing it gets praised for. And alas, that concludes my list. The top 5 games that I dislike that everyone else likes. Remember that, again, this is all my opinion, and if you enjoyed any of the entries that I listed on this video, then that's perfectly fine. I totally see the appeal of all these games, for sure. These games just didn't resonate with me on the same level that they have with other people, and that's perfectly fine. If you'd like to share your opinions on this video, please let me know, as well as games that you dislike that everyone else likes as well, would be highly appreciated. With that out of the way, don't forget to brush your teeth, bitches.